Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Rebel News live stream on this, a Friday, May 31st, 2024. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, well, let me tell you about my co-host, folks. Do you know that today is National Autonomous Vehicle Day? Subtitled, There's a Transport Revolution on the Way, and we are here for it. Well, count my co-host and I out. We're just not all that down with a kinder, gentler Hal embedded in the dashboard. She is the she-devil with a spatula. She is the Khaleesi of the greater Coburg area. She is Tamara Ugolini. Hey there, Tamara. And by the way, I should apologize to our audience for our lateness. We had technical difficulties.
Sounds like we had technical difficulties in more areas than one. I had some technical difficulties, had to do a complete reboot, and then we were trying something new with Rumble, and it just didn't quite get sorted out. So I think there's actually was a previous stream link, and now we have a new stream link. So hopefully everybody can kind of get migrated over to this stream. Maybe we will give them a couple minutes to do so, but we're running super behind and late. I guess, what's that saying? Never late, better late than never, David Menzies?
Yes, well, Tamara Ugolini, before we get to the top story, which of course is that outrageous Trump trial for which we received the decision yesterday just after 5 p.m., just to put a full stop on National Autonomous Vehicle Day. I'm the kind of guy, I'm so far behind the curve, I think I might be ahead of it. In other words, one of the things I love about Car and Driver magazine is they have a campaign called Save the Manuals. I mean, it just presses me to no end to see every year less and less vehicles available with a manual transmission. That's how I like to rock and roll. The idea of not only not having a manual transmission, but not even steering, braking, accelerating. I think the only movie I ever saw autonomous cars in was Minority Report from 2002. What else did we see in Minority Report, Tamara Ugolini? Oh, yeah, the pre-crimes unit, a future where you're deemed guilty before you actually commit a crime. You know what? What do you think is going to happen first in Canada, Tamara Ugolini? Autonomous vehicles or a Minority Report pre-crimes law enforcement ideology?
Well, I think the two kind of tie in together. Your car will be connected to your pre-crimes credit score, and depending on how you're ranked and rated, you will either be able to drive your car or you will be exiled to your 5-10 kilometer radius or your house area. That's kind of where I think the surveillance state is heading. I see that I'm really zoomed in on my side of the stream, so sorry in advance if everybody's getting an up close and personal stream today with my face. But maybe we should just run through what we're doing here, David. Normally it's Sheila, but she is on a tour for the MAID documentary, that state-sanctioned euthanasia that's coming or has already started to come down the pike here in Canada. And so as they're on the documentary trail, it is myself and David Menzies taking over our weekly stream that happens today, Fridays, from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern. So today is the last day of May. It's the 31st, and we are streaming on a couple different platforms. So YouTube, Rumble, and I'm so rusty at this. Gosh, it's been a few months. I don't even recall if we're also on Odyssey, and I think I'm missing another one there. But if you're new to us, welcome to the stream. Thanks for joining us, and we will kind of dissect some of the newsiest news items of the day. As David mentioned, there was Trump's guilty charge came down yesterday, and there's a couple other pieces. We're running really behind schedule, so I think, as David Menzies usually puts it, it's a jam-packed sausage, and we'll do our best to get through everything. And so, yeah, let's start with Trump. I know we had it on the schedule a little bit later, but David, do you have the 34 charges? I think we have the article that went up yesterday by one of our contributors, Ian Miles Chong. So Trump was found guilty on all 34 counts of hush money that he's alleged to have given to the adult entertainer Stormy Daniels, marking a historic first for a former U.S. president. So he's guilty by jury of felony charges of falsifying business records. Sentencing hearing will follow. And he has, of course, other ongoing legal battles, including other trials coming up. David, do you want to take over from there?
Oh my God, Tamara Ugolini, there is so much to unpack here. I mean, when this trial began, my blood was boiling, and then it boiled over the rim of the pot when the verdict came down. First of all, 34 counts for what is essentially a bookkeeping error, which I understand is 5 years past the statute of limitations. How does this even get to trial? Secondly, the jurisdiction of this court, Tamara, I understand you can do municipal and state and county level trials, but you can't do a federal trial, which this is. So again, a jurisdictional issue. The venue of this trial, how could Donald Trump ever get a fair trial? Do you know in this district of New York, it only voted 6% Republican in the last U.S. federal election. So basically, you got 94-6 odds that those jurors that they selected are against Trump. They're anti-Trumpers. They have Trump derangement syndrome. So as they say in Las Vegas, the fix is in. Juan Merkton, why is he there? He's an avowed Democrat. His daughter is making millions of dollars off this trial. If there was any justice, this judge should have recused himself on day one. But this is, Tamara Ugolini, make no mistake, this is the politicization of the justice system. This is the crap you see in banana republics, what we used to see in former Stalinist nations, including the USSR, what you'll see in a place like North Korea or China. Name the crime and I'll find the man who's guilty of it. I truly believe, though, I always look for the silver lining, so I don't want to add to all the anger out there. And the silver lining is this: we are exactly 5 months and 5 days away from the U.S. election. I bet you, Tamara Ugolini, you name the stakes, that the next time there's a poll in the days ahead about Trump's popularity, I could see him getting a double-digit increase, 10%. I'll bet you that's going to happen. And why is that? Well, what did we see 1 hour after the trial reached, the jurors, I should say, reached their verdict, Tamara Ugolini? The Donald J. Trump website crashed in just under an hour. This is an incredible website. It's got super servers. It's not some Mickey Mouse operation. And the number of people going onto that site making little donations and six-figure donations was overwhelming. They could not keep up with the demand. I ask you this, Tamara Ugolini, almost 24 hours after the verdict was stated, do you think the sales of MAGA hats and MAGA t-shirts are down today or up?
Well, I would be hard pressed to say that they are up, because you saw there on that article that Olivia just had pulled up, $34.8 million in donations in that 24-hour period. That is crazy.
1 hour, wasn't it?
In 1 hour.
Before it crashed.
I must have. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, so, after the guilty verdict. So I think that the support is just ramping up for Trump. And, I like in the article here where we quote, I don't know if we have a clip from him, but he was giving comment thereafter. He's obviously been claiming this has been a rigged and disgraceful trial all throughout. But he said the real verdict is going to be on November 5th by the people. and they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. So that 5 months, that is coming up really quick, that November 5th election. And there you have it. We'll see. The real verdict, as Trump says himself, is going to be by the people. We'll see what happens. I think that the Liberals have overplayed their hand once again, the Democrats in the United States, as they're doing here, and similarly and seemingly all across the world, and just overplaying their hand. But at least we get to see who they are and what is really happening there on the socio-political landscape. Here in home, we have there is so much happening in Canada at the same point in time. The corruption of the Liberals, the rise of anti-Semitism, the globalist capture of our healthcare systems, and the radical indoctrination and infiltration of ideologies into our school systems. So Canada itself is a mess as well. And we have a video here from Trudeau, who, well, I won't put words in his mouth. Let's show this clip of Trudeau, our fearless leader and prime minister, and then we'll get some comments after.
CBC News. The Sergeant at Arms says there's been an 800% increase of harassment against MPs in the last 5 years. One of your own, Pam Damoff, is not running again, citing increased harassment. What do you see as your role in helping to clamp things down, Prime Minister?
Well, first of all, no one should face harassment or threats of violence in their place of work anywhere in this country, in any job they do. This is something that we all must recommit ourselves to as a country and ensure that everyone understands that. At the same time, when MPs or MP staffs, which is increasingly the case, are targeted, that's not just an attack on an individual or a political party. That's an attack on our democracy. Democracies rely on diverse groups of people figuring out how to find a way forward we can all agree on. It is core to who we are as Canadians, that we listen to each other, we respect each other, and we choose a path forward through rigorous democratic processes at all orders of government. The current atmosphere of polarization, of toxicity, of misinformation, of disinformation, of anger directed at individuals and institutions is not a healthy trend line for democracy in Canada or everywhere around the world where we are increasingly seeing it. We need to get back to having conversations, yes, in robust conversations about the best way to move the country forward, and there will be all sorts of important debates to be had. That's the way our system works. But individual hatreds and acts of violence aimed at people who are serving their communities, who put themselves forward to serve their communities in any order of government, that's unacceptable, and it's something that all Canadians need to be mindful of and aware of as we reflect on what kind of country we are and what kind of country we want to be for the future.
You know, Tamara Ugolini, the most remarkable thing about that statement is that Trudeau didn't end it with, and that's why we need Bill C-63 enacted into law. Talk about the pre-crimes unit. Talk about censorious thugs. I mean, yeah, Mr. Prime Minister, I totally agree. No one should face harassment in doing their jobs. So why did your RCMP goons physically assault me and arrest me on a couple of occasions? Why did my beloved colleague Alexa Lavoie get a tear gas projectile shot at her thigh, and thank God it landed there as opposed to her face, because I fear we'd be talking about Alexa in the past tense. Why are you such a censorious thug when it comes to shutting down the independent media, which will be one of the direct results of Bill C-63? So shut down the independent media, keep funding the trained seals in the mainstream media. I mean, even that question was such a setup, Tamara Ugolini, because the fact is, and by the way, I should point out, I had a video about this earlier in the month. The new head honcho at the RCMP hoping for a law that will enable law enforcement to charge those who say nasty things about their elected officials, because right now the RCMP lacks that tool in their toolbox. Like what? The Emergencies Act, like freezing people's bank accounts. To Mary Ugolini, we've always had a system where the line is this: if you threaten harm or death, you're going to be charged. That's in the criminal code. If you're stupid enough to put that on in writing or on social media, well, then you deserve to be charged. But I'm sorry, for hurt feelings, politics has always been a blood sport, going back to the days of Julius Caesar, in that case, literally. The idea that there are thin-skinned politicians out there that need some new law, some new level of protection. As the old saying goes, can't take the heat, get the hell out of the kitchen. And if that MP is too fragile, that she can't take nasty name-calling, well, good riddance. That's not the mettle of leadership.
It's not even nasty name calling, though. It's just legitimate criticisms.
Yeah.
If your policies can't, and the way that you're conducting your government, the way that you're running the country can't stand up to the critiques and criticisms of the people that pay your salary, then we have a bigger issue here with thin skin and staying out of the kitchen. The anger directed at individuals and at institutions, I would argue to say, is actually Trudeau's own fault.
Yeah.
He campaigned in the 2021 snap election on the wedge issue of people's vaccine status, making things like anti-masker and anti-vaxxer and anti-social distancing. Like, anybody who didn't blindly follow the COVID regime and the rules that were implemented on them without evidence or justification to do so was labeled as some sort of fringe minority, as he called all of the truckers that as they headed to Ottawa in the early months of 2022, after a year and a half, almost two years really, of being fed up with the way this government was acting more like a dictatorship than any sort of democracy. And so for Trudeau to come back all of a sudden and now be trying to rein in his own polarization of Canada as a country is very rich, but not surprising given the behavior and the conduct of this prime minister, who has more ethics violations wagered against him than any other prime minister in Canadian history. This is just paving the way for his censorious bills that stack on one another. And I think, as Ezra has put it before, that will just fall like dominoes onto the censorship of social media and everyday people who criticize or condemn the way that this government is acting. This isn't any sort of beacon of democracy that Trudeau is trying to enforce or instill. This is the exact opposite. And this is just doublespeak rhetoric coming out of either side of his mouth. Because if anybody's been around long enough to see how he acted throughout the COVID hysteria, you can see point blank that this is complete hypocrisy on display. And as I mention all the time, it's the hypocrisy of the bureaucracy. And we need to be able to critique them, criticize them, and condemn when their policies and behavior is failing the country, which I think it's pretty clear all of the above is happening now. And they just can't stand to have that opposition levied against them.
No, you're 100% right, Mary Ugolini. Let me tell you something. I'm not a psychiatrist, but I really do believe Justin Trudeau is a sociopath. I really do believe Justin Trudeau suffers from projection. Projection is a psychological element where you project your worst qualities on others. So to use your example, he lashes out at the freedom-fighting patriots of the trucker convoy as haters and being divisive. No, Mr. Prime Minister, that's you. You are dividing groups of Canadians against one another. He lashes out at Canadians, calling them racist. No, Mr. Prime Minister, how many times again is it that you've donned blackface? Oh, yeah, I forgot. Not even you know the number. He lashes out at Canadians, calling them sexist. Sorry, Mr. Prime Minister, Who was the one that groped reporter Rose Knight? Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. She experienced it differently. Also, Tamara, you notice with Justin Trudeau, unable to apologize, as in a personal apology. His first couple of years in office, he went on an apology tour, but it was apologizing for others, never for his wrongdoing, always for what others did. And you said it yourself. How many ethics code violations is he up to? He violates that every week. Whenever, our viewers might not know this, but when the Liberals are having a press conference, they are mandated to say where, as in the venue, the city, and the time. And they do not release that information anymore. It's in black and white. And they just get away with it with impunity because they don't want to attract, impolite media types. They don't want to attract anti-Trudeau protesters with their F Trudeau flags. It's all about controlling the narrative. Like I said, Tamara Ugolini, if we could find somebody to get into Trudeau's inner circle, someone who's a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and have Trudeau lie down on the couch for an hour for a little psychoanalysis. Then again, no, don't do that. The psychiatrist himself might be so shattered after 60 minutes of hearing Trudeau pour out his true feelings that he might have to rescind his practice. But talk about the pot calling the kettle black, eh?
Yeah, you heard it here first, folks. We are officially requesting a wellness check on Justin Trudeau. In the next video, we have a clip of him. Sorry in advance to everybody who just can't stand the whiny, breathy voice. But we have another clip here where he is finally starting to condemn the actual violent and hate-targeted attacks that are happening on Jewish schools and synagogues all across the country.
Parents dropped off their daughters this morning at a Jewish girls' elementary school that was shot at over the weekend. And in Montreal, another Jewish school was targeted by an overnight shooting last night. I was, of course, relieved that no one was hurt, but I'm disgusted by these vile and despicable acts of anti-Semitism. It needs to stop now. To Jewish parents and students across the country, we stand with you. We will always work to safeguard your right to live proudly Jewish lives in Canada. We're, of course, working with local law enforcement and will utilize all available federal resources to ensure that the perpetrators are held to account. We cannot and will not let this anti-Semitism stand in Canada.
Tamara Ugolini, I'm getting a little sick and tired after hearing this for 7 months now. Meaning the anti-Semitism, the Jew hatred, has to stop now. Do something about it. And when Trudeau talks about reaching out to local law enforcement with resources, what are the resources for? Buying Java and Timbits at the local Tim Hortons to keep the pro-Hamas thugs nice and refreshed while they chant genocide in the streets? I mean, Tamara, a lot of our viewers no doubt know I've been arrested at 2 pro-Hamas rallies just for the suspicion I might ask an insensitive question to the members of the Hitler Youth Movement. And again, another example of Minority Report from 2002 becoming the reality in Toronto in 2024. These we got one victory in court. We're waiting for another trial to happen in August. And yet we have these people chanting genocide. Nothing to see here, folks. We had somebody charged earlier this year, Tamara, for flying a flag of an outlawed Palestinian terrorist organization. Its charter actually, in writing, decrees the death of the Jewish people. When it went to court, the Crown threw it out. No reasonable grounds of prosecution. Yet me as a journalist just showing up on King Street and literally in the town square, Nathan Phillips Square, adjacent to City Hall, they go balls to the wall against me to have me convicted for what? Nothing. So again, to bring it back to our point, these politicians, starting with blackface, have to stop saying this has to stop now and do something tangible, because I'm getting sick about it. And by the way, when I say tangible, by that I don't mean issuing 5,000 visas for Gazans to come into Canada. And that's not 5,000 people, folks. That could mean 5,000 family members, so multiple of 5,000. I say that because, yes, there's a war going on there. Yes, there are innocent civilians, but we can't take this risk, Tamara. We know in a recent poll, more than 80% of Gazans support Hamas. You want to bring people like that into our country? We already have festering hatred everywhere, and you want to go to the big league haters and import them here? No. Do something. Enforce the law. We have hate speech laws. We have laws against vandalism, physical assault, arson. And because of the identity politics, Tamara Ugolini, I just see two-tier policing and two-tier politicking.
Yeah, well, and we do have trespass laws as well, but you would never know it based on the growing encampments of, I love the way you word that, the Hitler Youth movement, growing encampments at our universities all across Canada. And, you know, we saw, just to bring up again, the hypocrisy of the bureaucracy in 2022, when the truckers were idling and impolitely honking on side streets, public property, not private property, and not fencing off and cordoning off entire areas where nobody is allowed through unless they're pre-approved to do so. They invoked unprecedented martial law, the Emergencies Act, to quell and deal with that peaceful protest and peaceful assembly. And now we have the proliferation of encampments blockading off areas of private property, and the courts are going to take 3 more weeks in the case of the U of T encampment to try to legally dismantle it. This is just absolute upside down, bizarro world that we're living in. And meanwhile, we have Alexa Lavoie heading out in Montreal, where some sort of hooded thug shot up a Jewish high school earlier this week at 3:36 in the morning a.m. Shows him walking to the school, unloading his weapon, and running away. And the police weren't on scene for, I think it was almost 48 hours later. Just, this is upside down, bizarro world policing, lack of enforcement of the rule of law. And many of these people, as you've mentioned, are not even Canadian citizens. We saw the way that the Trudeau regime treated Canadian citizens when they invoked martial law, the Emergencies Act, to deal with the trucker convoy in 2022. And then here we are having people on visas and other means of obtaining entry into the country, and they are treated with the utmost respect. We can't even begin to fathom penetrating their encampment situation, where I would argue that many of them aren't even spending a robust amount of time. They're just hoping that the fences don't come crashing in and anybody see that the jig is up.
And Tamara, I got to tell you, I think law enforcement has been worse than ineffectual. They are aiding and abetting, I think, these thugs to continue pushing the line. I mean, right now, we've seen video evidence of Toronto police officers being assaulted by people wearing these Kafifa disguises, and the cops turn the other way. It's outrageous. Our beloved big boss man, Ezra Levant, he was at the press conference on the weekend in which a Toronto Police Service detective was talking about the shooting at the Toronto Jewish Girls' School. By the way, he never used the word Jewish, right? Which is kind of odd, don't you think? But Ezra's question, I'm paraphrasing here, was that, do you think, given the way in which, the police have turned a blind eye to actual law enforcement, that this has emboldened the thugs on the pro-Hamas side. The officer would not answer the question. He said, I'm just here to talk about the shooting at the school, and then eventually ran away to his vehicle. And by the way, it was his personal vehicle. Looked like it had an illegal tint to me, but hey, what the hell? One law for thee and one law for me, I suppose. So I really think that's what's going on. It's two-tiered policing, and when these thugs see that they can get away with, well, I'm not saying murder, although I wouldn't be surprised if that's the next step in this, Tamara. Well, can you blame them? The lunatics are running the asylum. Also, you mentioned what's happening in universities. I want to make an addendum here, Tamara. Not all universities, right? At the University of Calgary earlier this month, the day their little Gaza went up was the day it went down, because you know why? The administration dialed 911, called in the Calgary Police Service. The riot squad went out in whack 'em and stack 'em mode. Our colleague Sid Fizard covered it firsthand. Problem solved. Meanwhile, the University of Toronto, plenty of blame to go around, but most of the blame is to that woke, weak soy boy president, Merrick Gertling. He is the U of T president who, first of all, it was warnings. Please leave by this day and time. Oh, it was ignored. Then a week ago, Friday, Tamara Ugolini, they were issued formal trespass notices. By the way, the university got the date wrong, but hey, that's how they roll at this higher place of learning in Toronto. The trespass notice was to be in effect last Monday at 8 a.m. Guess what? It was ignored. Then they went for an injunction. As you rightfully said, that's going to take 3 weeks. June 19th, they're going to have their day in court, which obliterates convocation ceremonies, which were to begin this Monday, and that would have been a stretch, Tamara, because the lawn is in hellacious shape there at U of T. Why doesn't Gertler, and I have asked the media relations department this 3 times, and they ignore my emails, why doesn't he just pick up the phone, dial 911, and get the Toronto Police Service to come in and take out the trash, which is what you have to do because it's private property. Unless the police are called in, they can't come in. So if the University of Calgary can do it, why can't the University of Toronto? And don't give me this crap that university administrators are saying, well, you know what, we're committed to free speech and this is free expression. No, you're breaking, I think, 11 sections of the Trespass Act. Secondly, you are calling for genocide openly. There are signs that say from the river to the sea, intifada. And free speech, Tamara Ugolini, are you kidding me? It is a gated community. If you or I were to go down there today and ask to get in, we do not get in. The occupiers, the illegal trespassers, have the chutzpah to act as though they are the landowners. There is no free expression. The only way you get in, you have to pass a litmus test. Basically, if you say you hate Jews and you want to nuke Israel, okay, Bob's your uncle, you're in. But if you want to engage in critical thinking, oh no, you're not worthy. Give me a break already.
Yeah, I want to button up on the point you made that this inaction is emboldening and empowering people to continue, these thugs to continue with this kind of behavior. Just this morning, there's the 3rd Jewish institution in Canada targeted in a deliberate act of hate this week. That's just in this week. This is from the National Post about 2 hours ago. It was a synagogue in central Vancouver, the latest Jewish institution to be attacked in Canada. It was a home for many Holocaust survivors, if you can believe that, seeking a safe haven in Canada. And now the subheading reads, now it has bombs being thrown at it. The rabbi posted on X. This is just, there really are no words for how disturbing and disgusting that kind of behavior is for people who are seeking, a safe haven, Holocaust survivors. And then this is what they're met with in 2024 in Canada. It is disturbing, to say the least.
Tamara Ugolini, I have a few words, as always, and it's about the double standard. Can you imagine if this was an Islamic school? Can you imagine if this was a mosque? What would be the political outcry? You know what, Tamara Ugolini? We don't need to imagine it. I go back some 6 years ago, I believe, if I have my figures and my dates correct. Remember the hijab hoax? Remember a Muslim girl at a Toronto District School Board school said that she had her hijab sliced by an Asian carrying a pair of scissors. What happened? Mayor John Tory, Premier Kathleen Wynne, Blackface himself on Canada One flew in. The Toronto District School Board stages a press conference. The whole bloody thing turned out to be a hoax, but without even doing their due diligence, without even doing an investigation, they went out to condemn Islamophobia. We see anti-Semitism. They turn a blind eye. And then, worst of all, Tamara Ugolini, when it was revealed that this was a hoax, what was the outcome? Well, I already mentioned Justin Trudeau never, ever apologizes unless he's apologizing for other people. I remember the likes of Bernie Farber, who used to be with the Anti-Hate Network, going, yeah, it was a hoax, but it might have happened, so the outcry was justified. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? But it looks like when Justin Trudeau says it needs to stop now, clearly, just hours after he says such a thing, it ain't stopping now. Again, I go back to what I originally asked Tamara Ugolini. What are they going to do about it?
Yeah. Well, let's, on that note, go to a quick ad break, and we have 2 more headline topics to get through when we come back. So stay tuned in a few moments.
Why should you join Canada's National Firearms Association? We currently have one of the most aggressively anti-firearm governments in our nation's history, promoting fear and placing blame like never before. Our rights, freedoms, culture, and heritage, it's all on the line. But we are fighting back, and there is strength in numbers. We work within the law to change the law, to defend competitors, hunters, collectors, and other law-abiding firearms owners. We can get through this. We've done it before, and we'll do it again, if you are with us. Canada's National Firearms Association. Freedom, safety, responsibility.
This report is brought to you by...
On June 15th, Canadians for Truth, in collaboration with Veterans for Freedom, is coming to Legacy Place in Red Deer, Alberta, to present Veterans for Freedom, From Service to Solutions, featuring insights from Canada's military veterans. This event offers a unique opportunity to connect with recent veterans who provide a behind-the-scenes look at the issues shaping Canada's future. This event will feature 6 dynamic presentations by esteemed Canadian veterans. Hear from a former intelligence officer with 30 years of national security experience and an Air Force squadron leader who has served with both the Canadian and British Armed Forces, and others with unique and compelling experience. Their first-hand insights provide a unique perspective on the challenges and opportunities ahead. Visit canadiansfortruth.ca/events to secure your seats. This full-day event features speeches, networking, food and refreshments, and a special evening presentation of Fire and Ice with NHL legend Theo Fleury and Canadian business leader Joseph Bourgault. Don't miss your chance to hear from inspiring veteran speakers, connect with like-minded individuals, and discover what you can do to make a difference. To learn more and to get your tickets to this unforgettable event, go to www.canadiansfortruth.ca/events right now. Seize this opportunity and hear directly from our veterans whose sacrifices, experiences, and commitment to service provide invaluable perspectives that enrich our understanding of the challenges facing our country. Get your tickets today.
You know, Tamara Ugolini, I want to give an apology out there to any gender studies students watching the live stream. I know Adam Seuss standing in front of a tank and a fighter jet to do his ad. That's really toxic masculinity writ large, wouldn't you say? So we're sorry if you've been triggered. I understand the local Dairy Queen has soy alternatives for your dietary needs. And I got to tell you, Canada's National Firearms Association, I have a female, how shall I call her? Friend, acquaintance. I love her. I'm not going to give her name. Yeah, I'm that paranoid that somebody might watch this and do a background check on her. A couple of things since Trump first came to power and endured 8 years of unfairness. She became a news junkie. Her face is buried in her tablet every waking hour, and that was never the case. And secondly, she went out and got her pal, became a gun owner, goes to the gun range, I'd say 4 or 5 times a week. This is a complete, almost Jekyll and Hyde transformation, but it's someone who is tuned in, is red-pilled, if you will, is awake to what's going on. And I can tell you, she is a member, I believe, of Canada's National Firearms Association. They do great work, and they're standing up for the rights for gun owners. And by gun owners, I mean legal gun owners, sport shooters, hunters, not the gangbangers in the mean streets of Toronto that go through the revolving door of justice. Evidently, that's okay. But some guy in Saskatchewan hunting ducks, no. Throw the book at him. Unbelievable. Anyways, didn't mean to get off on a tangerine there, Tamara Ugolini, but just thought I'd throw in a word for our sponsors.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for that. And good for your friend. Cognitive dissonance is strong. And so to be able to see what's happening around you and change your worldview is these days, I would say, a virtuous thing. So speaking of virtue, or I guess lack thereof, right now, the World Health Assembly is taking place in Geneva, Switzerland. And so this is really a globalist health gathering. The World Health Assembly meets every year in Geneva this particular week from May 27th until tomorrow, June the 1st. And they are the decision-making body, so the governing authority of the World Health Organization. So if you are having a hard time, like I am, keeping up with how many globalist gatherings there seems to be in any given year, this is certainly one to keep your eyes on, because they vote, amend, and rule by dictatorship and diktats to the rest of the world what is happening in the health sphere. So, of course, our very own health necromancer, Canada's, actually, I don't like to call her Canada's chief. So the interesting thing about Theresa Tam, she's the Chief Public Health Officer of Canada, but she actually wants to be called Canada's Chief Public Health Officer because she wants to make it seem like, she has ownership of Canada, I suppose. We discovered that in an access to information request. Wow. So I always like to refer to Tam as Chief Public Health Officer of Canada, not the other way around, because that's her preference. And, Tam just really gets on a lot of people's nerves for the way that she has handled the COVID pandemic, promotes these novel injections for everybody, but especially children, babies, and toddlers, and, continues to really want to enforce and rely on this sort of biosurveillance state with tracking and digital IDs and pandemic measurements and routine immunization. I mean, the list goes on and on. But anyway, she has been at the World Health Assembly this past week representing Canada, despite the fact that she was not elected to do that by anyone here in Canada. And we have a really great clip of her at one of the plenary meetings. So at the World Health Assembly, they have committees, and these are all live streamed, but many of them happen at the same time. So for one person to follow and try to keep up with what is happening at the World Health Assembly is next to impossible, because there are so many events happening at the same time, and those are live streamed. But there are also events that are not live streamed, and they're called side events. And we've discovered, I'll have a report out later today, actually, we've discovered that Tam partook in one of these side events, and it's very, hush hush. There's not a lot of information out on it. So I kind of dissect what we do know and what I've tried to obtain from our wonderfully transparent government, as they would have you believe, but turns out they're not really. So speaking at one of the plenary addresses that was live streamed, this is a clip of what Theresa Tam had to say. And actually, as a precursor, before we show the clip, at the World Health Assembly this week, they are discussing the amendments to international health regulations. So there are 300 proposed sweeping amendments to this existing international legally binding law, the international 300? Health regulations. 300 amendments are being proposed, and they can't even agree on them. So it's a lot of rigmarole, and this dates back to roughly 2 years ago. The WHO has been really keen on strengthening its mandate since the COVID pandemonium ensued. And I guess they just didn't have the authority that they so desperately want and need to control global health responses, even though we basically saw that almost the entire world kowtowed to the whims of whatever Director General of the WHO, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, wanted to see done. And so we already did that. But for whatever reason, the WHO wants to strengthen their mandate. And I mean, a lot of it, I would say, just means get more funding. But nonetheless, they're there this week. The most pivotal themes are the IHR amendments. So that's amending existing international law, which would have sweeping repercussions to our national sovereignty and future pandemic responses. We know that there's disease X. So this is a placeholder for all of those future diseases that Tedros has told us is not a matter of if, but when they come. And then there's also a new pandemic treaty. They can't quite get the wording down. So it'll be a pandemic treaty, an accord, or an agreement. So these two things, these two changes and new agreement will really complement one another to strengthen the WHO's mandate. And there's been a lot of opposition to this, including here in Canada. Our own MP, Leslyn Lewis, has been an outspoken advocate against rushing either of these pieces through, and she's been denouncing them. But in case you were doubting whether or not Health Canada and the Public Health Agency of Canada, overseen by Theresa Tam, was listening, we can hear from Tam herself that they are in fact leveraging to move forward.
Together, we must improve health promotion efforts to reduce disease burden and foster mental and physical health and well-being. An integrated approach to essential service delivery requires the inclusion of nutrition, sexual and reproductive health and rights, and routine vaccination. This also means strengthening both external and domestic financing for health, which is why Canada is invested in the Lusaka agenda. We must also step up our efforts to address systemic and historical discrimination against Indigenous peoples within our health systems. Gender equality is foundational to a peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable future for all. Let us continue to fight racism, sexual and gender-based violence, and discrimination against marginalized groups, including 2S LGBTQI+ people, women, and girls. And let us renew our support for those on the front lines of care. We have a collective responsibility to ensure the protection of our healthcare workers and condemn the unacceptable attack on them and on health facilities. The many conflicts in the world, including Gaza and Ukraine, serve as stark reminders of the fragile nature of accessing critical health services. Canada urges all member states to support WHO's critical health emergencies work. A strong WHO must also be inclusive, reflecting the entire global community. This means supporting Taiwan's meaningful participation as an observer at the World Health Assembly. This week, we will collectively decide on next steps on both the pandemic agreement and on the IHR amendment and negotiations. Canada remains committed to continuing to work together to prevent and minimize the devastating consequences of future global health emergencies and pandemics, and to further advancing health equity for all. A meaningful pandemic agreement is consensus-based and one that member states can sign, ratify, and implement. Thank you very much.
Well, Tamara Ugolini, you are way more up to date on these World Health Organization shenanigans than I am. But I want to hear what you have to say. I'll tell you what I took from that. That was the first time I saw that. And I got to say, there were more red flags in that 2 minutes of woke world salad than you would find at a bullfighters convention. But first of all, routine vaccinations like experimental vaccinations for viruses that don't exist, but they're coming. Trust us, they're coming. We didn't let you down from 2020 till 2022, did we? Well, yeah, you did. Gender equality, and then she does that whole initialgram for whatever the Rainbow Mafia goes by these days. I can't keep up. That sounds to me, code speak for trans women are real women, guys pretending to be females are actual real females. I think that's what she means by that. Bringing up Gaza and Ukraine, lady, stick in your lane. What does that have to do with health? These, this is a geopolitical matter. It's war. It's not health. I mean, she's all over the map. What did you call, Tamara, that we call these side events? You know what that reminds me? Back in the glory days of the circus sideshow, which is to say you'd have the main circus, the three rings under the big tent, and you'd see the marquee acts like the Lion Tamer and the Trapeze Act. But outside the big tent, you would have the circus sideshow acts. It would be like the geek biting the heads off chickens. So yeah, that I think it's a good analogy to have an equivalence to the circus sideshow of yesteryear by calling this a side event. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I had a nice little mental image there of Sideshow Bob from The Simpsons and Teresa Tam. But anyway, maybe some meme generator can work their magic there. Having to fit in all, I think she hit almost every social justice buzzword there possibly was before she made sure that she noted we recommit to the IHR, those international health regulations, and the pandemic treaty. And that's really interesting because that was one of the things that Leslyn Lewis, she penned a letter earlier this month to federal Liberal Health Minister Mark Holland, and basically stated in there that there are certain things housed within these amendments in the pandemic agreement that aren't really related to health. And so one of those things is the climate change hysteria or the climate alarmism that we see coming out of the Liberals. And I think Tam even mentioned in there the funding, right? So there's always, it's like follow the money. Who's vying for more funds? Where is it coming from? How are they going to gain compliance in order to get them? The World Health Organization is a private organization, and it is funded primarily by Bill and Melinda Gates through Gavi, the Global Vaccine Alliance. They're the second largest donor to the World Health Organization. So the World Health Organization is a private interest organization funded by private interest groups, and they're here to dictate to the rest of the world how they will comply. We have a really great clip too. It's on my Twitter. It would be down a couple posts, but if you search my media, it's only a couple down in there. And basically the clip, if we can't find it, it's Bill Gates speaking, I believe last year at a roundtable. And he says that he speaks for everybody when he addresses these discussions. And he says that there needs to be a global authority. So that's the World Health Organization. Oh, here, we have the clip. So let's just play this clip really quickly because it's really creepy and a very clear indication of what's to come if we continue to strengthen the mandate of the World Health Organization. Have a look.
The WHO is going to need more resources to have a dedicated team, not just for when the epidemic comes, but to go to the world's countries and make sure that these drills are being done. We do fire drills. The Defense Department does war games. We need for epidemics to practice. In fact, one of the reasons why Australia did well is that it, like Taiwan was threatened by SARS-CoV-1. And so this idea of, okay, who are these PCR people? How do you get them engaged? It was partly practiced because of that previous threat. And so we need to be doing every 5 years a really comprehensive exercise at both country and regional level of pandemic preparedness. And you need a global group that's kind of scoring everybody and saying, hey, you know, if you're not participating in this, you could be the source of the next pandemic. And that's bad for the entire world. This is like a fire that goes global.
You know,
it's...
Tamara, is it just me, or is Bill Gates looking a little pale these days? I think he has to work on his tan on Epstein Island, maybe. Anyway, I got to tell you, what is this deal with Bill Gates, who is a computer guy, suddenly passing himself off as a medical doctor? He's got no medical credentials. Also, what really galls me about Bill Gates, Tamara Ugolini, is that he's one of these guys on team you'll own nothing and be happy. But isn't it perversely ironic that going back to the founding of Microsoft, which made him one of the richest men in the world and still is, that capitalism worked really, really, really nicely for Bill Gates, didn't it? When he catapulted from running Microsoft out of a garage to being a multi-billion-dollar global conglomerate. So I just can't stand the hypocrisy. And what I'm really curious, Tamara, why is it that the man who has everything is so hell-bent on this agenda in the first place? Oh, have we lost?
Again, I would argue to follow the money and look at...
Oh, well, folks, I think Tamara Ugolini said follow the money. I think that's kind of my point. How many billions do you need? How many Rolls Royces do you need in your garage? Bill Gates has it all. And for him to be on, maintaining the narrative that he is right now and passing himself off as a doctor. Look, I know, Mr. Gates, you are a brilliant computer person. I know you know how to code. I don't think you went to any medical school for 7 years to weigh in on viruses, ones that are existing or that are down the road. Well, you know what, folks? I have lost my beloved co-host, Tamara Ugolini. I hope she wasn't in a autonomous car and it went off a cliff, this being World Autonomous Car Day. But I do see it's 2:15. Oh, Saved by the Bell. Tamara Ugolini.
Surprise.
I was just about to sign off. I'm so sorry. Everything okay on your end?
Bill Gates must be listening. Yeah, everything's okay. No, it's my spotty rural connection. I'm very sorry, everyone. Next time I will join David Menzies in studio so we don't have this reoccurring issue of a spotty connection.
That's right. I was expecting you here. I even put on some of the top shelf cologne. What do you think about that, Tamara Ugolini?
Well, I was hoping to hear that you bought me some fresh flowers or something that I could take home and have displayed.
I think that might be against our non-existent human resources contract.
David, before we wrap things up, do you want to run through quickly? We had put in the headline that there would be a trans man returns to rugby update. Maybe you can give our audience a quick update on that, and hopefully my internet will stick around long enough to get through it.
I very much do want to weigh in on that. Maybe we can, Olivia, do we have a clip of that? Because I think the clip says it all. And I'll weigh in with my final thoughts. And by that, I do mean final thoughts when it comes to Fergus Highlander female rugby. So let's roll this clip, and I'll tell you how it all turned out. And I guess, how we're not moving forward on this file anymore. Check it out, folks.
Ash, Tommy, I see you're back playing against females. Why are you doing this?
So it might take one of the players seriously getting injured or killed.
Exactly. And that's what's going to happen.
If you talk to anybody here, make comments, rude comments, you will be charged as well.
Make rude comments? Is that a law, sir?
Yeah, I don't agree with it either.
Oh, you don't agree that he should be here?
No.
What do you feel about a biological male competing with biological females?
You're under arrest for trespassing.
Okay. Why?
You're in the... Okay, hands behind your back.
Hey, Ash, how do you feel about taking a spot away from a biological female?
Coaches have told players that if you express your discontent for the matter with the news agencies or just in general, you will be ousted from the league and off the team.
So, folks, that was the cold open to our report. Last Saturday, an entire team went out there, including cameramen Efren Monsanto and Lincoln J, and our extra special elite female athlete envoy. That would be the wonderful April Hutchinson. We thought we'd bring her along just to ask the females on the team how they like the idea of competing in rugby and getting injured in rugby thanks to the inclusion of male players. And by the way, folks, who cares what David Menzies or Tamara Ugolini or April Hutchinson has to say about this invasion of a man into female rugby? I defer to World Rugby, the international sports governing body that was way ahead on this file. Tamara Ugolini back in 2020 said, nope, you cannot do this. This is a rule. A biological male cannot play against the biological females. But Rugby Ontario, Rugby Canada, they are colonized by wokesters. This is diversity, equity, and inclusion writ large. You saw that unbelievable clip of that OPP sergeant saying, if I say anything rude, I'll be arrested. Now, if you watch the whole video, folks, what I said after he said that is if he could kindly quote the part of the criminal code that criminalizes rude commentary, because if that does exist, Tamara Ugolini, we have to build about 2 million jails overnight to incarcerate rude Canadians. His answer to me is, you have 5 seconds to get out of my face or you're under arrest. And I immediately walked backwards, literally into the woods, because evidently the permit wasn't just for the field. It was for the parkland around the field. They wouldn't provide proof of that. So I'll just have to take them at their word. Now, as you can see here I am getting arrested. What's the charge? Trespassing. You can see I am where the fans are. I was scrumming a fan. You can see the people in the tents right behind me. You can see the lines. I'm not on the line. I'm not on the field. And I, once again, get the Game of Thrones Cersei walk of shame in handcuffs to the police cruiser and given this stitch-up bullcrap charge. My final thought on this, Tamara Ugolini, and I want to hear what you have to say, and if we have any super chats, I'm delighted to hear that too. That's it for Fergus Rugby. We've been covering this since last July, and all I have to say to all the female players on this team, and more importantly, to all the female players on the opposition teams, with the exception of Niagara, which last year defaulted a game because they took a stand and said, we're not putting up with this rubbish. If you're not going to walk off the field, if you're not going to stand up for what's right, if you're not going to adhere to the rules, the World Rugby rules, then to hell with you. Why am I getting upset? I don't have any skin in the game. I don't know any female rugby players. I don't have daughters. I have 2 sons. Why am I putting everything on the line and going to bat for you when you're a bunch of cowardly ingrates? This ends tomorrow, Tamara Ugolini, if these women say, we are not taking the field. If every game ends by default, people say, oh, then you're making a mockery of the sport. Are you kidding? It's already a mockery. And we see this in swimming. We see this in volleyball. We see this in powerlifting. The list goes on and on. Biological females have to grow a set and get off the court, get off the field, get out of the gym, and say we are not participating with this farce. Because as far as Fergus Rugby is concerned, Tamara, that's it for me. You've made your bed. I've done all the reporting I possibly can. I'm done.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you, David. I think that your boots on the ground, your shoe leather journalism on these files have been top notch. And
Thank you.
at the end of the day, we have made everyone aware that this exists, that it happens, and tried our best to show how it does not uphold World Rugby rules. And this is, again, in contravention of those rules. And I think that doing that kind of journalism on behalf of the silent majority, on behalf of the severely normal people who can see that this is wrong and aren't really sure how to stand up against it, I think that maybe this has shown them that it's time for everyday people who think that they don't have a say, who think they're just, lay people that aren't going to make a difference. I think it's very clear that it will take them banding together and sitting this one out to really have their voices heard and get those ripple effects of change to happen. Because sadly, like we saw in that video, a lot of people agreed that this was wrong, and they were nervous and concerned that it was going to hurt biological women, because there are very clear sex differences between biological men and biological women. And it will be a really sad, disturbing day when a real biological woman is injured, perhaps irreversibly, by the fact that a male exists and is able to and allowed to play against her as an equal, when it's very clear that that is not equal. So thank you for your journalism on that file, David. And
thank you, Tamara. And by the way, if I may add one last epilogue to this, based on something you said, I am afraid that, because it's a question I've asked, and it was a question that April Hutchinson asked on Saturday. What is it going to take? Is it going to take a female player dying on the field because you're accommodating a man who might have mental illness issues, who might be a misogynist? I don't know. And you know what, Tamara Ugolini? It will not take that, because what the response will be from these woke wimps running sports is that, well, how do we know that that player wouldn't have died if that was a tackle by another biological female? That's where they are. Even a death on the field won't matter whatsoever. And all I have to say, too, is, these videos, to answer another point, the silent majority, they generate thousands of comments. I can't possibly read all of them. I read hundreds of them. I've maybe seen one or two where it's basically, oh, come on, leave them alone, let them play. All the rest are expressing outrage. My final thought on this, Tamara Ugolini, is this. If I could give those players and those officials and those coaches and those referees truth serum and ask them what they really think of this, I bet you they would say it's disgusting. But we have this horrible culture right now of cancel culture. It is quite literally tyranny of the minority. It's people worried that they'll be deemed a transphobe and there can be no other greater sin, that they will be fired, that their business will be boycotted. And to that, I say this. I go back to the great Kirk Douglas film, 1960, Spartacus. And it's that scene, Tamara, where the Roman centurions, they're trying to clamp down on a slave rebellion, and they track down a bunch of slaves led by Spartacus who are free. And they basically say, look, we're not interested in all you. You can remain free men. We're just interested in finding Spartacus, bringing him back to Rome so we can crucify him, make him an example. Who's Spartacus? And you know how the scene goes. There's a pregnant pause, and then one slave, who is not Spartacus, says, I'm Spartacus. And then another goes, no, I'm Spartacus. And then another one, no, I'm Spartacus. The point is, if we all stood up to this transanity, if we all stood up to this madness, it would end. But until we do so, expect it to get worse and worse. I'm sorry, Tamara, I don't see anything else happening, because right now, the transgenders are weaponizing law enforcement, and the law enforcement, they've been colonized by the whole diversity, equity, inclusion hucksters, and they are now arresting people, case in point, me, for asking rude questions. That's where we're at, and I'm done with it.
Well, and I would argue that they weren't even necessarily rude questions, but rather real, journalistic questions like, do we not care about the other women and their safety when they're out playing against a biological male on the field, with such a high impact, high contact sport like rugby? But I digress. We do have one super chat here, and it's from Annalisa 1964. She gives $20. Thank you very much, Annalisa. She says, "My sweet Menzies. Oh, how I have missed that smile. Big hugs to all of you at the Rebel."
You know, I got to tell you this, Tamara Ugolini. Number one on my bucket list. No, number two. I really want to buy a classic car before I die so I can put my Menzoid vanity license plate on it. I see you've got the Ugolini license plate, which I think you're never going to put on one of your vehicles. But so number two on my bucket list, I have to meet this Annalisa. She is the nicest viewer, always so generous with her donations, always so kind. So when I'm having a bad day or a rough week, when I see one of those super chats come in, it's just so wonderful. It's so positive. Annalisa, I beg of you, where were you in high school, my friend? Where were any Annalisas in high school? So thank you again from the bottom of my heart, Annalisa.
All right, everybody, we are 27 minutes past the hour, and I know we started a little bit late, but we're going to wrap this up. Sorry we couldn't get to all the other topics that we had on the schedule today, but you'll just have to like, share, and subscribe to Rebel News, because we're going to publish stories about them as the day continues if we have not already. So be sure to stay up to date there if you can't catch us on the weekly live stream. It was great to be back. It's been I think several months since the last time I joined on the live stream. So a bit rusty, but dusted the dust off of my shoulders, and here we are. So thanks everybody bearing with us over some technical difficulties. And David, do you want to take over your signature sign off?
Yeah, well, next time, please do come in so I can hug you, Tamara Ugolini, now that the Me Too movement is over. There's other pressing matters. And folks, have a great weekend. The month of May, I swear, that might be the fastest month I've ever lived through. And it was a 31-day month, too. How do you like that? Tomorrow's June. Have a great weekend. And in the meantime, as always, stay safe and stay sane.
Sure. We will throw every single resource. We've increased funding for the police, and we've also given thousands of dollars to places of worship if they feel threatened. But folks, let's cut to the chase here. What lunatic goes around shooting up schools? Like that is just unacceptable. Imagine that. Imagine a little kid in a school because they're from the Jewish faith. Someone goes by and starts shooting through the school windows. These guys need to be caught. They need to be punished. They need to be thrown in jail. And I'll tell you, we have zero tolerance for this anywhere in Ontario. And it doesn't matter what race, what creed, what religion you're from. I'd be saying the exact same thing if it was another community as well. But enough is enough. You're bringing your problems from everywhere else in the world. You're bringing it to Ontario, and you're going after other Canadians, as the Prime Minister said. Unacceptable. I got an idea. Before you plan on moving to Canada, don't come to Canada if you're going to start terrorizing neighborhoods like this. Simple as that. You want to come to Canada. You want to be a resident of Ontario. You get along with everyone. I don't care what background, what religion, what race you come from. You know, the diversity is our number one selling tool around the world. We have 110 nationalities here in Ontario, 200 languages being spoken. And guess what? 99% of the people get along. There's